Hello and welcome. My name is Marc Blatstein, the physician founder of Physician Pre-Sentence Report Service. And I too had to spend some time in federal prison. And now I'm here to help you on your journey. After the video, you'll see links to my website, Physician Pre-Sentence Report Service, to have any of your questions answered, or feel free to call and engage my services. Good intentions. We've all read in the news where the Federal Bureau of Prisons and their ability to calculate or not calculate the amount of earned time credits that someone has worked hard for towards having them eligible for early release, either to halfway house or home confinement. And we're approaching it as if all of this is new news. So we're going to start here with 2013, May of 2013, memorandum to the regional directors, wardens, residential reentry managers, guidance for home confinement and residential reentry center placement. Residential reentry center is halfway house. And so I'm going to read both from my notes and from what I've outlined here in blue. Previous guidance memos, policy and practices regarding home confinement and halfway house or residential reentry center placement decisions. The Bureau of Prisons Residential Reentry Center resources continue to be limited and must be focused on those inmates with the greatest need and the highest risk of recidivism because they need a place to start. If they don't have a home to go to, if they don't have a job, the halfway house, at least on paper, is their at least best first chance to put their best foot forward. The Second Chance Act also emphasized the requirement that all inmates are eligible for pre-release placement should they have supervised release on the court orders. But now this was before the First Step Act. And so now with the First Step Act, you can actually earn more time on or release time earlier to home confinement or halfway house. And if you're incarcerated for a longer period of time, they can stack all those extra earned time credit points you have towards days, cutting your sentence off, you're making it a shorter sentence, and then adding into it the Second Chance Act benefits. This was previously outlined in a June 24th, 2010 memorandum revised guidance for residential reentry centers. And so I'm going to open this up and let's just see if I'm in the right place. And so here we have, this is the, whatchamacallit, a program statement. Community corrections managers shall ensure that each appropriate inmate is placed on home confinement as soon as otherwise eligible. The community corrections manager shall consult with the community corrections regional administrator or designee prior to placing on home confinement any inmate for whom the following factors apply. And then they'll go through these 5 factors. But let's assume, for the sake of conversation, that you qualify. If you've done everything that you can while you're currently incarcerated, then you may be able to have your case manager act as an advocate. Not all the time, no promises, but at least to help to start this ball rolling. Then on April 14, 2008, another memo came out, pre-release residential center placements following the Second Chance Act, which is what I just alluded to or referenced. Accordingly, every effort should be made to consider community placements for inmates with manageable medical and mental health care needs. And then it goes into this program statement on home confinement, which we just reviewed together. Normally, this is accomplished via 2 home confinement options: placement under the supervision of the residential reentry centers or the halfway house. And this is where they're responsible to make sure that you're doing everything that, appropriately. But we also know that even though there has been First Step Act and other resources, Second Chance Act has provided funding to the Federal Bureau of Prisons for halfway house beds, there is still a tremendous shortage. So the second option, which doesn't appear to be being used, is placement in the federal location monitoring program operated by the U.S. Probation where available. So what is this? Let's open this up and I'm going to come over here. Authority to impose location monitoring, pre-trial, post-conviction, pre-release. This is where you are monitored while you are on home confinement. So if it's post-conviction, alternative to imprisonment of any individual may be statute eligible for probation. A sentence of probation includes mandatory conditions and discretionary conditions. And so compliance with this can be monitored by telephonic or electronic signaling service of the court, et cetera, et cetera. But there is already established by the U.S. courts this policy of location monitoring. And so this is not a new principle, federal location monitoring. We're going to continue. Residential readiness center or halfway house placements, usually these 5 factors. These are all, again, assume that if you are already preparing for home confinement and for halfway house, then you pass this. The resources of the facility contemplated, nature and circumstances of the offense, the history and characteristics of the prisoner, any pertinent policy statement by the U.S. Sentencing Commission. In many places, a placement up to several months or a maximum of 1 year may be needed to accomplish this inmate's reentry goals. But it doesn't make sense if the person, no matter on their age, but if they have a home to go to in a safe neighborhood, possibly have a employment already lined up, or they're in the age of retirement where they're retired, or they have someone at home that needs to be cared for, why should they be in a halfway house? Why should they still, at worst, still be in prison? And so we're going to continue making the appropriate referral for direct home confinement pre-release. As outlined, this is a program statement, home confinement. Per 18 U.S.C. 3624C, all inmates are eligible for home confinement consideration at either their 6-month or 10% of their sentencing date, of whichever comes less. Now, this is in 2013. Okay, when considering for release to community placement, the unit team can pay special attention to reviewing the low and minimum security inmates. But here I'm underlining this because if you're not getting in trouble, you're doing things that will enhance, you're learning new things. It's constructive activities. Then the case managers at some point may become your advocate. Basic criteria of home confinement: appropriate release residence, a positive environment, free from criminal drug use of activity. We've already gone through that. But also, in addition to this, wherever you're staying can be, your significant other, your spouse can have a letter regarding your character, but also in support of you coming home, that it's a safe neighborhood, that that they will go out of their way to make sure that you stay on the straight and narrow, that you have work, that you have children to care for, that this was out of character for the person that they married or the significant other. And so those character letters can help. No recent major disciplinary problems. Secured employment is not required, but can be helpful. In processing inmate referrals, the residential reentry matter staff will determine if the placement will be via a residential reentry center contract or to have this federal monitoring program. Review of home confinement referrals. These residential reentry halfway house staff are encouraged to maximize resources to include recommending direct placement on home confinement for appropriate inmates. The halfway house is required to review home confinement for eligible inmates every 2 weeks if they have the time. Now, this was in 2013. I'm sure that these laws haven't gone backwards. In 2010, the memo referenced above was changed to a weekly review. And now with digital and electronic and telephonic, that may be increased a bit. Coordination between institution staff and residential reentry managements. If the residential reentry manager staff have concerns regarding a referral or the recommendation placement, they will communicate these concerns to the referring institution, typically to your case manager. So once again, if you're not getting in trouble, if you in addition to taking the programs that have been referred for you to take, that maybe you're teaching a class, maybe you have started reading books that will teach you something. If you have an interest in marketing, in the arts and science, and you want to be a painter, wherever your interest is, history, philosophy, doesn't matter. Maybe you've gone on for higher education, you've got your GED, online courses for an associate, a bachelor's, a master's degree. All of this helps. If the residential ranch manager determines that a modification to a referral is needed, such as direct home confinement for an inmate with low needs risk placement, then they just need to get this change approved by the warden. Have you not earned the respect, but has your time in prison been spent productively? Modifications can occur with the warden's consent. Overall summary: each of the placements is based on an individual assessment. All inmates are eligible for home confinement. Direct placement on home confinement should be considered for low and minimum secured inmates. This is now even more critical because there's less and less bed space available. And just keeping someone in prison because there are no bed spaces available seems to be it just seems to be a cost that's prohibitive that the BOP can't even afford. In locations where halfway house bed space is limited, ensuring an inmate's timely placement on home confinement will help address the capacity and will free up beds for others to come into the particular halfway house. So reviewing my notes to a bit to go through, the caveat here is that when dealing with the BOP or the courts, unfortunately, nobody can make you any promises, nobody can make you any guarantees. A lot of this has come from Forbes. Walter Pavlo is a writer for Forbes. And here's the disconnect. Case managers who are on the front line of implementing these laws are encountering problems because if they're not understanding and are not being able to interpret the law correctly and halfway house capacity issues. Jeremy Cooper, again, part of the article in Forbes from Walter Pavlo, Jerry Cooper is NCRO Correction Program Administrator. You can stack the Second Chance Act, home confinement, and then add in your earned time credits, first step back earned time credits towards your early release, but that's not happening. And why isn't it happening? Because case managers don't have a current projected release date or calculator to see anyone's real-time transition date to a halfway house. Cooper said, with no calculator, there can be no stacking, and this calculation has well, and this calculator has been promised for months. Dr. Gable, first step back related issues using the administrative remedy process. Again, there are problems with this. Again, in the Forbes article written by Walter Pavlo, case manager, again, are unaware of the rules. The process is broken. Many staff do not understand the administrative remedy process. One, two, the process of then getting to where you get PP 8, 9, 10, 11, and then after that, that can take up to a year or more. Then to 2241, when it gets to the court, can take months to over a year to reach your district court. And sometimes it can be too late, which is going to be a future YouTube. But it does you no good to finally make it to court. And by the time your case, your your 2241 appeal gets in front of your judge, but you're already in halfway house, they have to deny it because you're already not in the BOP anymore. Case managers are left, I liken it to being the middle child, telling adults in custody or telling all of us that the central office advised they have no update or information regarding when the second application as a protection release date of leaving the institution is, as they're still unavailable. And so they're caught in the middle between the person who, between adult in custody, if you're going in, if you're already in prison, or if you're waiting for a loved one to come out, they're in the middle between that person asking, and then ultimately it has to be the central office that keeps accurate records, which appears to not be happening regarding a timely projected release date. I hope you have found this helpful, and thank you for tuning in. I know you're busy, and I hope you all have a good day. I hope this makes sense. Any questions, please give me a call on my website. The information is listed here.